I'd like to say it was a joke, that it came from a place of friendship or playful challenge. But the truth is, even then, standing under the hum of that flickering ceiling light, something in her tone made the air feel heavier. Like the room itself had started listening. I work at a small gallery/repair shop on the edge of town, the kind of place that smells like varnish and dust and rain-soaked cardboard. We fix frames, polish old wood, sometimes hang paintings for people who don't remember where they got them. Mira was one of those people, at least at first. She came in carrying a broken frame, her fingers wrapped in a scarf instead of gloves. "It's not worth much," she said, placing it on the counter. "But I don't like throwing things away." Her voice had that even, practiced calm of someone used to hiding what they mean. I remember the way she looked at everything but me, the walls, the shelves, the faint water stains near the ceiling. And then, when she finally did look, it wasn't in the way people usually do. It was quieter. Searching. Like she was checking if I'd already made up my mind about her. She started coming more often. Always with a reason, a loose hinge, a chipped frame, once even a clock that didn't need fixing. Sometimes she stayed after closing, pretending to browse. She'd ask about the tools, the smells, the paints. She never talked about herself, and I never asked, though every silence between us felt full of questions neither of us wanted answered. Once, I caught her tracing the outline of an old painting with her fingertip. It was a portrait, young couple, laughing. Her expression softened, then tightened again, as if remembering something she wasn't supposed to. "Do you ever fix things that can't be fixed?" she asked. "Only until they break again," I said, without thinking. She smiled, a slow, uneven thing, and said, "That's honest." That was the first time I noticed her hands trembling slightly, even when her face didn't. Weeks went by like that. I'd see her through the glass before she entered, always composed, always a little late. Sometimes she brought coffee. Sometimes she forgot why she came. I pretended not to notice, but I did. Every time. One evening, the shop was almost dark when she stopped by. She said she'd been at a dinner and didn't want to go home yet. Her lipstick was smudged, hair pinned loosely. There was something raw about her, like she'd stopped performing for the world but didn't realize it yet. She sat on the counter while I tried to reattach a metal clasp to the frame she'd brought. "You're too gentle with it," she said, leaning closer. "Sometimes you have to press harder." I didn't answer. My hands were shaking, though I pretended to focus on the pliers. That's when it happened, a tiny accident, really. I nicked my thumb on the edge, and she reached over, instinctively, to take my hand. Before I could pull back, she bit down softly on the skin just above the cut, playful, reckless, and looked up at me with a faint smirk. "You'll regret not taking me," she said. Then she let go, just like that. Like it meant nothing. But I stood there long after she left, staring at the mark her teeth had left, feeling my heartbeat in my thumb, wondering if she knew what she'd done. Or if, maybe, she was hoping I wouldn't forget. No mention of the mark, no trace of that strange electricity that had left me restless ever since. Just her voice, calm, measured, asking if I could help her restore an old painting she'd found in her attic. I told her I could. Maybe too quickly. We worked in the back room that day, the quiet part of the shop that always smelled faintly of turpentine and old rain. I laid the canvas on the table, its surface cracked and yellowed, and she hovered nearby, arms crossed like she was afraid to touch anything. "It's from my mother's house," she said after a while. I almost threw it away once. Her tone was flat, but her hands betrayed her, fingertips brushing the edge of the frame, lingering there like she was remembering something she didn't want to say aloud. "What stopped you?" I asked. She looked up, a small crease between her brows. "I'm not sure. Habit, maybe. Guilt. Then, quieter, I don't know which is worse. There was nothing for me to say to that, so I just nodded and went back to cleaning the surface. Still, I could feel her watching. Every movement, every small sound. The air felt thick, not uncomfortable, just heavy with something unspoken. Sometimes I caught her reflection in the window, hair loosely tied, a few gray strands glinting under the light. She looked tired, not in the way people look after a long day, but in that deeper, quieter way that comes from years of pretending to be fine. When she laughed, rarely, softly, it sounded like something breaking open just a little. "You don't talk much," she said at one point. "Neither do you," I replied. That made her smile. "Maybe that's why I keep coming back." Hours passed like minutes. The sun outside dipped low, the light turning gold and then gray. She helped me hold the frame while I tightened the clamps, and her sleeve brushed against my arm, barely a touch, but enough to make my breath catch. She noticed. I could tell by the way her gaze flicked toward me, then away again, pretending to focus on the painting. Her jaw tightened slightly, the smallest tell. Then, as I reached to steady the corner, her fingers brushed mine. Just once, quick, accidental, and yet neither of us moved for a second too long. When she finally pulled her hand back, she said, "You shouldn't make a habit of helping women like me." I didn't understand what she meant, not fully, but something in her voice made it clear she wished she hadn't said it. Later, when she left, I found her scarf still hanging on the chair, dark blue, soft, smelling faintly of lavender and smoke. I should have called her back. Instead, I folded it carefully and set it beside the finished frame. That night, I kept thinking about her hand against mine, how brief it was, how careful she'd been, and how, even in her distance, she made silence feel like an invitation. The storm started just after closing. Thunder low and constant, rain hammering the roof in uneven rhythms. She'd stopped by to pick up her scarf, said it quickly, as if that was the only reason. I locked the front door behind her. "You'll be stuck here a while," I said, nodding at the downpour. "That's fine," she murmured. "I don't mind waiting." She stood by the workbench, tracing the edge of the finished frame I'd left there for her. "You fixed it," she said. "It's better than before." "It wasn't hard." "You say that about everything," she replied, but her voice softened on the last word, and for a second, the sound of rain was the only thing between us. We sat at the small table in the corner, the one covered in paint stains and old receipts. I poured her tea from the thermos I kept for long nights. It wasn't much, but it felt like a gesture that mattered. Steam rose between us. Her hair was damp, loose now. She didn't seem to notice. "You shouldn't stay this late alone," she said, watching the window. "I don't like going home when it's raining." She smiled faintly. "You're too young to be saying things like that." "Maybe," I said, "but you keep coming back anyway." That line hung there, light, almost teasing, but I felt the shift in her posture. Her eyes dropped to her hands. She rubbed her thumb against her palm, a nervous, repetitive motion. Lightning flashed, and for a moment, her reflection flickered in the glass beside mine, two blurred shapes caught in the same quiet. "You remind me of someone," she said after a pause. "Someone who used to look at me like that." "How's that?" "Like you were trying to figure out what I'm not saying." She gave a short, humorless laugh, then reached into her bag as if looking for something. A phone buzzed before she found it, a name flashing briefly across the screen, Daniel. Her expression froze. She silenced it without answering, then slipped the phone face down on the table. "I should go," she said. But she didn't move. The power flickered, lights dimming to a weak amber glow. She exhaled, long and slow. "Every time I tell myself not to come here again," she said quietly, "I end up outside your door." I wanted to say something, anything that might make it easier for her to stay, but my throat felt tight. So I just nodded, watching her fingers tighten around her cup. Then she looked at me, really looked, and for a heartbeat, I thought she might reach across the table. Instead, she stood, smoothing her hair. "You should lock up soon," she whispered. "It's getting late." She walked toward the door but stopped halfway, hesitating under the soft hum of the storm. Her voice came out almost too low to hear. "Don't wait up next time." And yet, when the door finally closed behind her, I found myself still standing there, waiting anyway. No messages. No footsteps outside the shop. Just the hollow sound of rain gutters and the echo of that night. I told myself she'd moved on, that it was for the best, but every time the doorbell chimed, I still looked up too quickly. Then, one evening, she came in again. No excuse this time. No painting, no repair. Just her coat half-buttoned, eyes rimmed with exhaustion, as if she'd argued with herself the entire way here. "Hi," she said, breath-catching. "You still open?" I didn't answer. I just nodded toward the stool, and she sat down like someone who'd finally stopped running. For a while, we didn't talk. I went through the motions, wiping the counter, sorting tools, pretending she wasn't sitting a few feet away, pretending I wasn't shaking. When I finally looked up, she was watching me. "You're angry," she said quietly. "I'm not," I lied. Her gaze didn't move. "Then why do you look like you're trying not to be?" I laughed once, dryly. "Maybe because you disappear and come back like none of it means anything." Her jaw tensed. "It's not that simple." "Then explain it." She opened her mouth, closed it, exhaled through her nose. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was full, dense, the kind that presses against your chest. "Finally," she said, "you make me forget how old I am." It wasn't what I expected. It wasn't what I wanted either, but it was the most honest thing she'd ever said. I leaned against the workbench, unsure whether to move closer or stay exactly where I was. "Is that a bad thing?" She looked down at her hands, twisting the strap of her bag. "It's dangerous," she whispered. "You don't understand what it's like to want something that makes you feel alive and ashamed at the same time." Her voice cracked on the word ashamed. The sound of it made my stomach twist. I wanted to tell her she didn't need to feel that way, that I didn't see her the way she saw herself, but she lifted her head before I could speak. "You shouldn't look at me the way you do," she said. "I can't handle being seen like that anymore." Her eyes glistened, and she looked away quickly, as if embarrassed by her own honesty. I stepped forward, not enough to touch her, just enough to share her breath. "Mira," I said softly, "what are we doing?" She smiled then, but it was the saddest smile I'd ever seen. "Exactly what we shouldn't." We stood there, no distance, no space to hide, until she finally whispered, almost to herself, "I used to think silence meant safety. But around you, it feels like confession." And in that moment, I realized neither of us could pretend anymore, not even to ourselves. The next morning, she left a voicemail. I didn't listen to it right away, just stared at the missed call, the unknown number she always used, the timestamp, 2:13 a.m. When I finally played it, her voice was quiet, almost unrecognizable. "I found something," she said. "It reminded me of you. Or maybe it's the other way around. I don't know. I shouldn't have called. Forget it." That was it. 30 seconds. But something about the way she said reminded me of you made it impossible to forget. She came by later that week with a small envelope. Her hands were trembling, even though her voice tried not to. "It's nothing important," she said, setting it on the counter. "You can throw it away if you want." Inside was an old photograph, a man, maybe in his 30s, standing beside her in front of the same gallery we were in now. The resemblance hit me instantly. Same dark hair. Same uneven smile. Same posture, almost mirrored. I used to work here, she said. Years ago. He ran the place before I did. I turned the photo over. On the back, a date, 15 years ago, and her handwriting, for Daniel, in case we ever forget why we started. I looked up. He's the one who called that night. She hesitated, then nodded. My ex-husband. We were younger, braver, stupider. The gallery was ours. Until it wasn't. Her laugh was thin, brittle. He left, and I told myself I didn't care. But I kept everything, the photo, the frames, even this place. I just stopped letting anyone else touch it. She glanced around the room, her expression distant. You reminded me of him at first. The way you move. The way you listen. But then it wasn't him anymore. It was you. The words hung there, fragile and terrifying. I didn't know what to do with them, or with the weight of what they meant. Mira, I began, but she shook her head. Don't say anything. Please. I'm not asking for, I know, I said. And I did. She wasn't asking for love or understanding. She was confessing something deeper, the way grief sometimes loops back, disguising itself as longing. Her eyes glistened again, but this time she didn't look away. You don't deserve to be someone's echo, she whispered. And I can't keep pretending I don't see what this is doing to you. I wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, that what I felt wasn't just reflection or confusion, but her face stopped me. She looked resolved. She reached out, brushing her fingers against my wrist, the lightest touch, and said, I just needed you to know who you were walking toward. That night, I placed the photo on my desk, beside the tools and scraps of wood. The man in the picture looked nothing like me, not really, but the way she'd looked at him was the same way she sometimes looked at me. And for the first time, that realization didn't feel like hope. It felt like loss. She came by after hours again, no storm this time, no excuse, just the sound of the key turning in the lock like she'd done it before. I was sitting on the floor near the back, sorting frames. I didn't look up when I heard her footsteps. I didn't need to. You shouldn't still be here, she said. I could say the same to you. She didn't laugh. Just sat down across from me, knees drawn close, eyes on the dust floating through the weak light. For a while, the only sound was the faint hum of the heater and the creak of old wood. I listened to your voicemail, I said finally. You sounded lost. She gave a small, tired smile. I was. Still am, maybe. That's why I keep ending up here. There was no performance in her voice this time, no defense. Just a kind of soft surrender, like she was done pretending to be composed. You said I reminded you of him, I said. Do I still? Her head tilted slightly. No, she whispered. That's the problem. That line landed like a confession and a goodbye at once. She leaned back against the wall, closing her eyes. I thought I could keep you separate from everything that came before, she said. But I can't. You make it hard to keep my past where it belongs. I moved closer, not touching, just near enough to feel her warmth in the small space between us. She opened her eyes and looked at me. You know this can't be easy, she said. I don't need it to be easy, I replied. I just don't want it to be false. Her lips parted, a quiet breath slipping out. You really believe this is real? I nodded once. It's the only thing that has been. We stayed like that, no words, just the pulse of something fragile but alive, until she reached for the photo I'd left on the table beside us. She turned it over, stared at the writing on the back, then slid it face down again. I don't love him anymore, she said. But he's still in the room with me, every time I try to start over. I didn't know what to say. So I didn't. I just reached forward, slow, hesitant, and let my fingers rest over hers. She didn't pull away. Her hand was warm, unsteady. I felt her pulse against my thumb, steady, then faltering, then steady again. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. Maybe this isn't about fixing what's broken. Maybe it's about holding what's left. And then she leaned her forehead against mine, not a kiss, not even close, just stillness. Breathing the same air. Letting the noise outside fade into nothing. We didn't promise anything. We didn't need to. In that quiet, we finally stopped running from the truth that what had begun as a mistake had become the only thing that felt right. And somehow, that was enough. It's been 2 years since that night in the gallery. I still work there, though the walls are brighter now, the dust mostly gone. Her touch is everywhere, even though she hasn't been for months. The paintbrush she left behind still rests near the window, the one she never finished using. I can't bring myself to move it. People always ask if we ended up together, like that's the point. We didn't. Not in the way they mean. But we reached something deeper, a kind of quiet understanding that doesn't fit into words or labels. She taught me that love isn't always about arrival. Sometimes it's about the way you learn to stay, even when staying hurts. The last time I saw her was early spring. She came in wearing the same dark blue scarf, carrying nothing in her hands. We didn't talk much. She looked around, smiled faintly, and said, "You've made this place your own." I wanted to tell her it was still hers too, but the words felt unnecessary. We shared coffee, like old friends who once knew too much about each other. She told me she'd been painting again, teaching part-time, laughing more. Her eyes had a softness I hadn't seen before, like she'd forgiven herself for something invisible. When she left, she touched my arm just once, and said, "Thank you for not trying to fix me." I wanted to tell her she'd done the same for me. But she already knew. Sometimes, when the rain starts and the shop grows quiet, I still think about that first day, the broken frame, her voice saying, "You'll regret not taking me." I understand now she wasn't daring me to love her. She was warning me that wanting something real always costs more than you expect. And yet, I don't regret it. Not a single second. Because she taught me that connection doesn't have to last forever to mean something. That the people who pass through your life can still leave you more whole than they found you. Now, when customers come in, strangers holding things they're afraid to let go of, I handle them the way she handled me, gently, with care, knowing some breaks aren't meant to disappear. And sometimes, when the light hits the corner of the room just right, I swear I can still smell her perfume, faint lavender and smoke, and for a heartbeat, it's like she never left. Maybe that's what love becomes when it grows up, not possession, not permanence, just presence. A trace that lingers where it mattered most. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?